Hey, guys, tonight we're slipping into the heat-shimmered hush of the ancient Persian Empire. Just as the sun begins its slow descent behind ochre dunes, picture it, the air is dry enough to crisp the edge of your thoughts. The sand crunches underfoot like crushed parchment, and the sky is that impossible in-between blue where day hasn't quite given up. You're thirsty, might be a little sunburned, and definitely wondering why anyone thought settling in a desert was a good idea. Yet, you step into a half-buried dome, its surface caked in clay and lime, and are met not with more heat, but with a gentle, unbelievable chill. Inside is 10, might be 15 degrees cooler, where condensation ghosts under your touch. Somewhere deep below, frozen water lies in patient wait. Yes, you are in a Yakhchal, a Persian ice house, and you probably wouldn't last 3 hours without one. A moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop your location and your local time in the comments. Is always lovely seeing who else is tucked into bed somewhere in the world now. Dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The desert, oddly enough, isn't always hot. In winter, temperatures dip, sometimes sharply, and long before compressors and freon and kitchen freezers, the people of ancient Persia figured something out, something incredible. They harvested that winter chill and kept it alive. Deep into the heat of summer, you shuffle past a man hauling a basket of clay bricks over his shoulder, stacking them into what looks like an upside-down beehive. His tunic sticks to him with sweat. He gives you a knowing look, the kind that says, "Yes, it works. You see, the dome structure towers above, but is what's beneath that matters. A cavernous pit carved into the earth, lined with an insulating layer of a special mixture, ash, egg whites, goat hair, lime, and sand. Weirdly enough, this blend was water-resistant and thermally isolating. Fine at Home Depot. But hey, who needs modernity when your ice doesn't melt for months? You settle onto a clay ledge and glance toward the sunset. Chickens cluck somewhere nearby. There's the smell of lentils, cumin, and just a hint of goat. The cool air rising from the chamber below is oddly soothing, like standing too close to a refrigerator door, but with the added ambience of camel groans in the distance. Historians still argue whether the average citizen ever got to use these structures, or if it was strictly an elite thing. Either way, one thing's clear. People here were determined to keep things cold. Food, medicine, wine, especially wine. And yes, they made wine. You might be imagining tall amphorae and Dionysian Greeks. But Persians were early connoisseurs too. One ancient legend speaks of a woman who accidentally discovered it when some grapes fermented in a jar she was trying to poison herself with. Classic drama, mild alcoholism, and a happy ending. The wine probably tasted like raisin vinegar, but after a day in the desert, who's Jane, you trail behind a young apprentice carrying wine amphorae into the Yakhchal. He mutters something about not tripping over the cooling pit. You peer down. There, at the bottom, stacked in layers and packed with straw, is ice. Yes, ice collected in winter from nearby canals or formed in special shallow freezing pools that took advantage of frigid desert nights. Those pools, called havus, were carefully shaded and arranged with long north-south orientations. Would freeze in the early morning Workers would cut the sheets into blocks, load them onto sleds or donkeys, and slide them into these subterranean bunkers. It's kind of like working for a very ancient refrigerator delivery service minus benefit. Quirky sign. Note: some Persian texts refer to ice guard watchmen who kept kids from stealing frozen chunks, which, if you think about it, makes them the ancient version of get away from that fridge. It's not snack time. Outside, the stars begin to wing through the velvet sky. A light wind stirs the palm fronds. Insects hum. A cat slinks by, unimpressed with your tourist energy. The people here plan their architecture and daily rhythms around temperature. Walls were thick, were shaded. Water channels, called quanes, flowed invisibly beneath towns like underground veins. Cooling from below, the Yakhchal, though, was the crown jewel, a physical reminder that even in a brutal climate, the mind could carve comfort out of heat. You lean back against the inner dome. The air is hushed, like the building itself is asleep. The wine amphorae now sit quietly beside blocks of wrapped ice. The apprentice wipes his brow and gives you a sheepish grin, muttering something about how nobles can't survive a meal unless the dates are chilled. There's something deeply human here. The persistence, the cleverness, the absolute refusal to let the desert win. Not with feet, not with thirst, certainly not with tepid wine. As you close your eyes, your skin cooled by the whispering chill of ancient invention. You can't help but admire the elegance of it all. No electricity, no plastic, clay, wind, water, and willpower. Section 2, you wake, figuratively, of course, to the sound of rhythmic scrapping just outside the Yakhchal. Someone's dragging a shovel through hardened earth, methodically, like a lullaby with muscle. It's still pre-dawn, the desert air carrying that fleeting breath of winter, cold above. Stars cling stubbornly to the sky, refusing to yield to sunrise. What you're about to witness is the making of a Yakhchal. From the ground up, not metaphorically, literally. Just stumble across these domes. They engineered them with obsessive precision, like baking a cake where the frosting is several tons of ice. So you wander over to a partially constructed one, where a group of laborers, irritable, are laying the groundwork for what looks like a giant inverted funnel. The hole at the center is already dug, maybe 20 meters deep, wide enough to host an entire family reunion. If anyone felt like hosting a subterranean barbecue, dome will eventually rise over this pit. But first, insulation. You watch a man mixing what looks suspiciously like medieval soup clay, goat hair, and burnt ash, stirred with all the enthusiasm of someone who's been doing this since the reign of Cyrus the Great. It's called Sarai. And yes, it's just as weird to say as it is to walk on. But when dry, it becomes waterproof and heat-resistant. Historians still argue whether this mix was discovered through experimentation or passed down from even older Mesopotamian engineering. Some say it started as a lucky accident. Others think it was all part of Persia's grand architectural philosophy, form and function. In a battle against nature, into place, they begin to build the base wall in a circular formation. Then comes the layering of bricks. Here's the thing about the dome. It's not just decorative. The conical shape does more than just look cool on old tourist brochures. It actually reduces heat transfer. Hot air rises, cold air sinks, and the narrow top limits sun exposure. You, of course, just nod sagely and pretend you already knew that. One young builder points up at the scaffolding and grins to where bundles of straw are being hoisted. These will be layered between ice blocks and amphorae once the Yakhchal straw. It turns out is like the bubble wrap of antiquity, good insulation, good cushioning, and deeply satisfying to squish. You trail a master builder named Faribos, whose sandals are so worn they basically become spiritual. He's been doing this since he was 12, he says, and has only broken one toe. Not bad for a man in love with domes. He chuckles as he explains how the inner plaster must dry in low light. He invites you to tap the wall, solid, with just a faint give, like a bread crust just shy of burnt. Outside, the sun finally peaks over the horizon. Heat arrives not gradually but rudely, like a curtain yanked open. You suddenly appreciate why everything needs to be underground or shaded. The builders move faster now, trying to finish the day's layer before the sun boils the air like soup beside a wooden model of the dome and points out the narrow ventilation shaft at the top. This, he says, is crucial. Hot air must escape. Cold must be trapped. Sometimes they even plug the top with damp cloth to maintain internal humidity. Yes, humidity control in a desert. Ancient Persia might not have had smart thermostats, but it certainly had clever airflow. Quirky side fact, some elite families commissioned personalized Yakhchals for their estate, complete with engraved stones and protective amulets baked into the plaster. One legend even mentions a Yakhchal built solely to store a king's favorite type of melon, because if your royalty doesn't include cold melon in July, are you even ruling properly? As the dome nears completion, you're invited to climb the scaffolding. It's steep, creaky, and definitely not OSHA approved from the top. You see the Yakhchal rising like a silent sentinel in the sand, casting a long shadow over the nearby village. In the distance, a network of kanat glints faintly, those underground channels that feed both people and ice pits alike. Your guide hands you a flatbread wrapped around fresh cheese and herbs. It's warm, soft, and weirdly calming. He tells you the ice storage system also served a kind of social function, gathering places, collaborative effort, even a sort of competition between towns over who could keep their stock the longest. It is not just ice, he says, thoughtfully. It's pride. You sit on the edge of the dome, legs dangling, a slice of cool air drifting up from the ventilation shaft. A nearby boy tries to balance a pot on his head and immediately regrets it. The construction yard, despite the effort, despite the sun, there's a palpable sense of satisfaction in the work. Persians weren't just surviving the desert. They were mastering it. They were mastering it, one block of ice, one carefully placed brick at a time. Day winds down. Workers retreat into shadow. Tools are stacked, water shared from communal gourds, and the dome, now nearly finished, sits there like a giant earthen moon, silently guarding what it will soon hold. You place your palm against its surface again, still warm from the sun, but beneath that, promise, cold stored like memory, a chill that will last until the date harvest. Section 3. You wake before dawn again, though let's be honest, you never really stop dreaming, and find yourself following a quiet procession, moving steadily through the desert. It's not a parade, though there are drums, not a pilgrimage, though there are drums. There is reverence. It's a caravan, but not just any caravan. This one carries a most improbable cargo, ice. Welcome to the chilly world of midnight camel logistics. The camels look unimpressed, as always, their eyes half-lidded. Strides perfectly bored. You, on the other hand, are still trying to figure out how slabs of frozen water are being moved through an environment that could cook flatbread on a rock by noon. But here's the trick. They travel by night, always. The ice blocks, wrapped in straw, burlap, sometimes even old woolen rope, are loaded into padded crates, strapped across the backs of camels. The crates creak with every sway, sending little crunches of frost crackling into the desert hush. Walk beside a grumbling driver who smells vaguely of cardamom and patience. He tells you his name is Bahran, and this is his 6th season running the ice route between the nearby mountains and the city of Ray. He has strong opinions on camels, always annoy customers, never grateful. And the best way to pack ice, tight like you, loose like poetry. The route is long, sometimes 2, even 3 nights, depending on the terrain. Occasionally, they stop under a thicket of scrub or a windbreak wall, unwrap a crate to inspect the ice. A few blocks are chipped, a corner melted, but overall, solid. The sheer volume, ice packed together, insulates itself. A few pieces would melt quickly, but a chestful of slabs can keep it cool for days. Literally, you run a hand over the cloth-wrapped bundles as Bahram speaks. Moon, he mutters, sun is enemy, moon is friend. Moon likes quiet things. Ice is quiet. It's hard to argue with that. The desert at night is still, the kind of stillness that amplifies small sounds. The clinking of camel bells, whisper of burlap shifting, the occasional discontented groan from a beast of burden who really just wanted to stay in its pen tonight. Historians still debate how far and wide this system was used. Some argue it was limited to wealthier regions with access to mountain snow or seasonal freeze pools. Others believe even small villages experimented with nocturnal ice hauling, passing the knowledge through generations like a family recipe for there is evidence that ice brought from as far as the Zagros Mountains into central Persia, sometimes over 300 kilometers. That's a lot of sand to cross with a cargo that really hates heat, and yet people did it regularly. Festivals with snow sculpture contests. That's right, snowmen in July. In Iran, one of the younger camel boys, might be 12, all elbows and 2 feet grin, tells you about an old custom, offering a sliver of snow to travelers who arrive dusty and tired at the city gate. Just a taste, a tongue-cooling blessing, an ancient version of a complimentary hotel meal, but colder and less likely to be squashed at the bottom of your bag. Quirky aside, the camels sometimes got ice too. When particularly large shipments were involved, handlers would wrap slabs in cooling cloths and lay them across the backs of overheated animals. Bahram insists it made them smug. They walk slower, Prince, stupid prince, he says, spitting into the sand with comic timing. At the halfway rest stop, you huddle under a canvas top with the caravan. Fireless, of course. No one's melting anything tonight. Instead, they sip spiced milk cool with thin chips shaved from one of the crates. You try it. Sweet, slightly gritty, refreshing in a way that makes your bones sigh. A scholar riding alongside the group carries a wax tablet, scratching down notes on the logistics of transport and an melting race. He mutters to himself about ice loss per parasang an old Persian unit of distance, and weather insulation should be doubled during solstice weeks. He then promptly trips over a cactus and blames Aristotle. The camels snort, the crates sway, the stars glitter like chipquas above. As the sun threatens the horizon, the group makes its final push. Everyone walks faster. The ice must reach its destination before the real heat begins. You crest a final dune and see the faint silhouette of a domed Yakhchal just beyond the city edge, like a guardian waiting with open arms. Arrival is quiet, efficient. Each crate is unpacked swiftly, blocks of ice lowered down into the cool belly of the earth. A scribe tallies every piece. Some cities tax incoming ice by weight, others by count, still others by vague meltedness. Levels. Bureaucracy, it seems, has always been creative. It with care. It's smaller than the rest, roughly hewn, slightly cracked. He offers it to you for your pocket. He jokes. You laugh, mostly because your robe has no pockets. But you take it. It's cold, slippery, beautiful in its cold absurdity. A chunk of winter, delivered by moonlight across 1,000 dunes. You hold it to your cheek for just a moment. It stings, it soothes. You toss it into the storage pit with a little splash. The sound vanishing into the storage pit with a little splash. Yakhchal's depths, the yards, done. The sun is rising, and somewhere in the city, a merchant's wine will be served cool this evening. Not bad for a desert. Section 4. You're sitting cross-legged in a shaded courtyard, sipping something vaguely floral from a chipped ceramic cup, when a young girl bursts in holding a pale, dripping orb the size of a melon. Ice delivery, she shouts proudly, presenting it like a sacred offering. Her mother rolls her eyes and grabs it with a practiced flick, rushing to place it in the kitchen cistern before it melts into puddle irrelevance. Persian households did with their precious ice, and it turns out they didn't just hoard it like frozen gold. They used it quietly, creatively, and on hot days like this one, desperately. You follow the girl through an arched hallway where rows of clay amphorae line the walls like silent, slightly judgmental sentinels. Several are plucked with fabric, condensation beading on the sides. Her mother unplugs one and dumps the ice orb inside, creating a hiss that sounds almost relieved. This is Abanbar storage, subterranean cistern, cooled by both architecture and now a handy ice drop. The room smells of mint and earth and something you can't quite place. You guess. The girl shakes her head. Deal, household, cooling systems in ancient Persia were a thing of understated brilliance. Wind catchers, funnel, desert, breezes into the air like nature's, circulating the air like nature's own air conditioner. And when that wasn't enough, a handful of chipped ice added just enough chill to turn a sweatbox into a sigh-worthy refuge. Historians still argue whether ice was used primarily for storage cooling or for direct consumption. The truth is, probably both. Wealthier families drop thin chips into rosewater drinks or even chilled fresh fruit with it, a practice still echoed today in parts of Iran, where summer melons are paired with crushed ice and sprinkled sumac. You're handed a bowl of falundi, a frozen noodle dessert that looks suspiciously like someone ran vermicelli through a snowstorm. It's flavored with rose water and lime, and as you dig in, it occurs to you, this isn't just refreshment, it's celebration. Ice meant luxury, cool meant comfort. In the desert, temperature was social currency. How an elderly man tells you how. When he was a boy, the Ashpaskani, the kitchen, would host secret rituals on the hottest days, would gather around a basin and shave ice with spoon, giggling like school children. It was like being naughty. He chuckles like cheating the sun. You laugh along, but you can't help noticing the practicality too. House are thick. The floors stay cool well past noon. And in the corner of the courtyard, there's a hand-cranked device that looks suspiciously like an early slushy machine. Quirky detail. Some aristocratic households reportedly kept ice servant, a role somewhere between butler and freezer technician. Their job, maintain optimal ice storage, fetch chilled items for guests, and most mysteriously track seasonal ice losses with tiny pebbles in clay jars. One pebble lost oot, one block melted, a sobering reminder of entropy. In bean counter form, the girl now leads you to a tiny rooftop alcove where her older brother sits beside a carved marble basin. It's filled with tepid water and a single bobbing ice cube. He fans it solemnly. "It's my fish pond," he says. "No fish. Though too hot, you resist the urge to suggest a goldfish popsicle and instead admire the ingenuity. The whole household hums with subtle coolness. No fan, no friend, no friend, no friend. Hand ice hauled by camel. You recline beside a lattice screen that casts patterned shade across your legs, sipping ice, tamarind, syrup through a straw made of reed. Everything slows. The sun is out, but its power feels manageable, contained, even a little embarrassed by all this cleverness. Tells you a story about a visiting dignitary from the Mughal court who passed out from joy upon being served a cucumber soup in midsummer. Oh, a heat stroke, someone suggests. Either way. The uncle shrugs, the afternoon lazily poking around more houses, each with its own cooling quirks. Some use hanging wet cloths soaked with ice water. Others suspend clay jug near open windows to catch the breeze and bless it with chill. In one especially wealthy merchant's home, there's even a double cistern system, one for storage, one for lounging feet. Modern scholars often overlook these details, obsessed with the military and political histories of Persia. Humming kitchens, the soul of the culture persists. Cooling wasn't just a science, it was a lifestyle, a kind of architectural poetry. And yet, even among all this cleverness, the ice never quite lasts the full day. By dusk, most of it has vanished, turned to cool puddles beneath amphorae or absorbed into chilled tea. But no one seems to mind. They know more is coming. The icemen will arrive again before sunrise. The dome will open. The camel bells will sing. The cold wheels will sing. Return. You stretch out on a woven mat, face cooled by the last lingering breath of the wind catcher. Somewhere below, a child giggles. Somewhere above, a pigeon clucks disapprovingly from the shade of the dome. And for a moment, you understand. Cool is not a temperature here. It's a rhythm, a promise, a way of life carved from dust and patience. Section 5. The next morning, you're up early again. Blame the call of donkey carts and a breakfast of salted yogurt. But this time, instead of ice, you're following the clinking sound of glass jars and the distant scent of honey fruit, about to explore the surprisingly chilled world of Persian food preservation. Because when you live in a climate where your raisins can turn into crisps in an afternoon, preserving perishable is survival. Wrapped in ingenuity, you duck into a small family compound where two women, Esters, judging by their near-identical scowls, are elbow-deep in what looks like syrup. On closer inspection, they're making moraba, fruit preserves, orange, slowly soaking in a spiced sugar bath before being sealed into cooling jars. The twist, the jars are going down into the Yakhchal. Yes, again, because it turns out these ancient refrigerators weren't just for ice and milk. They were also quiet sanctuaries for the colorful sweetness of summer, stored like edible jewels under layers of straw, stone, and snow. One sister gestures for you to help. You're handed a wooden ladle and told to stir clockwise only. Otherwise, it turns into vinegar, she warns. Historians still debate the role of sugar in ancient Persia. Some argue it was rare and medicinal. Others suggest it was practically everywhere by the time of the Safavids, when cane fields were being cultivated near the Gulf. Either way, it found its way into reserves early on, transforming fragile, seasonal fruits into durable delight. You follow the sisters as they carry the sealed jars, now wrapped in damp cloth, filters in like honey. Through the thick dome above, rows of shelves hold pickled vegetables, jugs of vinegar, and yes, more of those curious clay amphorae with wax seal tops. One is labeled simply crispy. Olives. Do not touch. Cut. You do, however, sneak a closer look at a jug filled with what appears to be fermented apricots. Fast for winter, one sister says. Well, pour it over warm rice when the snow comes. Speaking of snow, there's a separate section of air, the dome filled with trays of compacted snow mixed with saffron and shaved almonds. It's a kind of frozen nougat, apparently very chewy, says the other sister. Terrible for your teeth. Makes your heart calm. You're not sure how calm. Chewing ice candy until your molars cry relates to inner peace. But hey, you're just a guest here. The sisters also keep milk and yogurt pots in the dome, usually up high to avoid floor-level melt puddles. Plentiful, they float bowls of yogurt inside a basin of cold water to thicken it, makes it dance on your tongue, they say, with identical grins that are mildly threatening in their pride. Outside, the midday sun creeps higher, so you follow your host to a shaded pantry built partially into the earth. This sardab, or cool cellar, keep dried meats, legumes, and, you guessed it, a few last blocks of rapidly melting ice waiting to be chipped for evening tea. One of the sisters licks a cube straight from the cloth and shrugs. Still good, quirky practice of the day. In some households, people would suspend bags of cooled rice from the ceiling on string, gently swinging them to keep the grains fluffy and prevent clumping. You must lull the rice to sleep, a neighbor tells you, completely serious. Even a tale passed around that one especially obsessive merchant miniature Yakhchal. Inside his home kitchen, a small cone-shaped clay chamber no bigger than a laundry basket, kept shaded and lined with layers of packed ash and sheep wool. Did it work? Probably not well, but the point was made. The cool must always be nearby. You help grind dried mint with a stone pestle. Then watch it, sprinkled over yogurt, mixed with camber and the tiniest spoonful of ice. The result, a spoonful of snow disguised as lunch. The kind of cold that makes your mouth sit up straighter. Here, says one of the sisters, handing you a chunk of chilled melon and what looks like a preserved rose petal. Eat this and your breath will smell like a princess' laundry. The detail sticks with you because in all the complexity of cooling systems, domes, and wind catchers, it's this cold melon, rose, and humor that somehow defines Persian culinary preservation. About survival, It's about keeping elegance alive in the face of heat, decay, and time itself. By the end of the day, the Yakhchal is shut again, sealed against the rising warmth. The jars are labeled, stacked, and covered with linen. Sisters sit cross-legged, wiping syrup from their fingers, bickering gently over whether apricot or quince makes a better preserve. And you're lying in a shaded corner, belly full of cold yogurt, cheeks sticky with syrup, thinking about the kind of world where refrigeration wasn't a plug in the wall, but a ritual, a shared knowledge, a gift passed hand to hand, block to block, in a dance of chill and sun. Section 6. You wake to the soft clatter of tools and the low rhythmic hum of digging outside under a sky that's already brightening into gold. A small team of workers is tending to the Yakhchal's base, scraping away sand, patting down the clay sand walls, and adjusting bundles of straw like the dome is some sleeping beast in need of grooming. Today, you're shadowing the people who maintain these desert refrigerators. Because let's be honest, it's one thing to marvel at the Yakhchal, designed from a comfortable shady spot. It's quite another to keep the thing from collapsing into a sun-baked crater full of lukewarm disappointment. You trail after Reza, the head caretaker, a weary man with strong calves and a perpetual squint as he surveys the dome from all angles. This one's been in the village for 200 years, he says proudly, running his hand along a seam in the wall. My grandfather patched that crack, and I still don't trust it. Turns out the upkeep of a Yakhchal is an art and a bit of a gamble. The walls, made from saroi, a plaster mix of clay, egg whites, goat hair, lime, and ash, are astonishingly durable. But they are not immortal. Each season brings heat stress, minor collapses, burrowing animals, and one particularly rogue rooster who once fell in and had to be lured out with frozen grapes. There's a long-handled tool hanging nearby, a sort of desert mop used to apply new saroi in smooth vertical swipes, and of course you do, but your results are lumpy at best, and someone laughs gently behind you. Con, don't worry, says Reza. The wall forgives, gives, repairs were once the job of specialized guilds, sort of like medieval desert HVAC union. Members passed down secret recipe for the best saroi mixes and held yearly ceremonies to bless the domes before the ice season began. These included symbolic offerings like bits of salt, crushed mint, occasionally small coins wedged into cracked T.E.O. brine. The heat. Historians still argue whether these rituals had real structural benefit or were just superstitious fanfare. But one thing's certain, they made maintenance a community affair. That sense of care, of keeping cool together, endures. Inside, there's more work. You join a crew rearranging the straw insulation. The dry bundles are carefully fluffed and rotated, like bedding for some hibernating god of refrigeration. Movement is deliberate, quiet, almost reverent. Someone shows you how they layer snow with sawdust or ash between straw mats to slow melting. They follow airflow patterns, channeling cool air downward and keeping dampness away from the walls. If the dome starts to sweat, says Reza, we all sweat. You also get a look at the drainage system. Yes, these domes came with ancient plumbing, away, often into a nearby garden. Because why waste good chill water on sand? And just when you think it's all practical engineering, someone gestures toward a little niche in the dome's inner wall. Inside, you find a faded tile, painted with a blue tulip tree traction. Someone says, you ask, they shrug, warmth mostly. There are also stories, so many stories. One woman tells you how her great-uncle swore a Yakhchal once whispered to him to patch a leak before it became a crack. Another insists the dome's inner echo changes pitch if there's too much meltwater. Is any of this provable? Not at all, but you listen anyway, captivated by the idea that even walls might have opinion. Then there's the dome-top ritual. Once a season, the youngest apprentice climbs to the very top to adjust the vent, a tiny opening that manages the airflow. Today, that jar falls to a boy named Amir, who is so nervous, he's sweating more than the ice. You watch as he ascends carefully, barefoot, holding a cloth-wrapped brick. When he reaches the top, he swaps the vent cover, murmurs a prayer, and tucks the brick into a sun-cracked crevice for balance. Someone whispers, you're not sure if it's symbolic or literal, probably both. Either way, when Amir descends, his grin is huge. It's breathing better now, he says, and breathe it does as the day warms. The dome continues its quiet, improbable magic, drawing in air, chilling it downward like a whisper. You sit by the shaft with your eyes closed, listening. There's a faint breeze, like a sigh, a little sandy, a little ancient. Before sunset, there's one final task. The ceremonial sweep. Reza and his team sweep the dome's floor and entry path with white palm broom, brushing away footprints, stray straw, and unlucky bugs. It must be clean for the night, he says. The ice deserves peace. You walk away slowly, casting a glance back at the structure now bathed in rose-tinted dusk. The dome looks oddly organic, like a seashell half buried in time. In a world where most things decay or vanish, the Yakhchal endures because people care for it. Patch it, sweep it, tell stories about it, risk their ankles on straw ladders for it. Cooling, it turns out, is not just engineering, it's devotion. Section 7 by now. You've seen the ice, the yogurt, the preserves, and the people who tend to them. You've scraped Saroroy, stirred syrup, and offered your limbs to ancient draft tunnels like some kind of chill sacrifice. But today you're going to see what all this frost and effort was really for. Because today, you're invited to a Persian summer party. Not a palace banquet, not a stiff royal affair. No, this is a village gathering, a late afternoon celebration held in the courtyard of thought, a home that has clearly hosted generations of such events. Kids race barefoot between pomegranate trees. Adults fan themselves with scraps of cloth, and in the corner, an old samovar puffs out steam like a sleepy dragon. Your host, Leela, waves you in with sticky fingers. You came just in time, she says, pointing to a stone basin lined with cold water and flower petals. In the center, bowls of sharbat. Sharbat is not just a drink. It's the love child of snow, syrup, and dreams of shade. Today's varieties include sour cherry and basil seed, saffron and lime, and one with camber and rose that tastes like what you imagine an enchanted glacier might melt into. Teeth will scream. Someone joke. You sip, and it's glorious, cold and bright, a kind of herbal slush that hits the back of your throat like a whispered blessing. Into the moment, and the ice. It's here too, carried from the Yakhchal in baskets lined with sheepskin. chipped into chunks and dropped into pitchers like prized jewels. Each pop and crack as the cubes hit liquid is greeted with smiles. Highlight of the day, a bowl of ice noodles, thin strands of frozen starch, shaved and curled into little mounds, then flavored with orange blossom syrup and chopped pistachios. You ask someone how they're made, and the answer involves a ladle, a sieve, and running very fast while shouting at the sun. Historically, sweets like these were so prized that some noble families had special servants just for handling snow and ice. Their job titles roughly translate to cooling masters. Occasionally, women trained not only in hurling and shaping ice, but in judging its purity, scent, and chill longevity, the sommeliers of frost, if you will. Historians still debate whether some of these more elaborate icy dishes, like the rosewater ice tamarind float you are now cradling, were reserved for aristocrats or filtered down to village celebrations over time. One school of thought suggests that thanks to widespread Yakhchal networks, even rural communities had access to cold treats by the 1600, especially during Nowruz or weddings. And speaking of weddings, you spot a pair of teenage cousins practicing dance to sneak sips of melon Shabbat. You're told it's training for cousin Jamsi's engagement next month. Apparently, he's marrying into a family that owns 2 Yakhchal towns. Dips lower, dinner arrives. Cold eggplant salad, rice with barberries and slivers of almond, and yogurt, everything. Yogurt as sauce, yogurt as dip, yogurt as dip, yogurt as music too. A 3-string sitar played quietly under a fig tree. The rhythm is slow, looting, the kind of sound that feels like it's already a memory. Children curl up in laps. Someone fans the embers of a small fire. Even the samovar sighs, drawn to a corner of the courtyard where a few elders sit on a stone bench. They're talking about Yakhchal. That collapsed 50 years ago. The dome folded like an old hat, one says. A pity. It had the best acoustics. Her grandmother churning ice cream with a copper bowl and a wooden paddle. She used to sing to it. She says, said the ice, listen better that way. You're not sure what that means, but you nod, and she pats your hand like you understand everything. You've been sipping ice and shadowing shadows all day. But now, in this golden lull, you feel something deeper. A sense of how Yakhchals didn't just store ice. They stored rituals, recipes, memory, a kind of magic. By the time the stars begin to prick the sky, your hands are stained with mulberry. Your lips taste of sour cherry ice, and you've officially fallen in love with Persian summer parties. Not just for the food or the snow, though let's be honest, both are excellent, but for the way people here gather around coal-light keys at campfire. In reverse, a place to share, laugh, cool off, and paradoxically, warm up to each other. You hear someone calling your Naila, probably offering seconds of whatever frozen miracle she's holding. You rise, brush the petals off your lap, and walk back into the glow of candles, cracked ice, and quiet joy. Section 8 morning again, but not just any morning. This one arrives with the hush of travel. You're leaving the village for a bit, bouncing gently in the back of a mule cart that creaks like an elderly narrator. Orchards and weathered shrine, until the land flattens into a high desert, plain scattered with the ruins of what once was a city. You've come to a caravanserai, or rather, The bones of one crumbling stone walls archway still tall despite centuries of wind, and a half-intact watchtower that now hosts nesting swallows. You climb down and stretch, dust rising around your ankles, and already you can feel the ghost of old commerce tugging at the corners of the place. Centuries ago, this stopover bustled with traders, Persians, Arabs, Central Asians, Turks, even a few curious Venetians, hauling textiles, spices, scrolls, and, yes, ice, comedy, fragile, coveted, and carried like treasure across vast stretches of land. There it is, the ice pit. You're shown a recessed chamber behind a mud brick wall, once roofed, now open to the sky. At its base lies the faint curve of a melted stash. They used to line it with camel hair and wrap the ice in rush mat, says your guide, who's a descendant of one of the old caravan families. It wouldn't last long, but long enough to serve a tired noble traveling with a personal cook, or to cool medicine for a merchant too rich to sweat, or, as one theory suggests, to refresh messenger pigeons. Yes, or simply poetic flair in some 10th century courtiers. There is such a weirdly lovely image that you choose to believe it. You sit under a pomegranate tree near the courtyard center, trying to picture the bustle, men in patterned cloaks loading saddlebags, women negotiating over almond sweet, someone desperately fanning a goat with a woven tray, and in the corner, a block of precious ice arriving from a Yakhchal, 60 miles away, wrapped in wool and sealed with hope of the day. There were ice caravans, seasonal processions of mule teams that traveled at night, moving insulated bundles of ice from high-altitude Yakhchal down to lower town. These treks were risky. A too warm night could ruin the lull. Bandits sometimes targeted the caravans not for gold, but for the ice itself. Imagine that. Thieves attacking for a taste of chill. Some Yakhchal managers even developed coded wax seals to prove their ice hadn't been tampered with, kind of like ancient freshness stickers. And one legendary merchant, a man nicknamed Snow Uncle, is said to have timed his delivery so precisely that he could guarantee a chunk of mountain ice in Shiraz just before the summer solstice. Paid it, you wander the grounds, peering into old chambers that once held grain, dates, carpets, and yes, spare tools for packing snow. In one room, faded paintings still linger on the walls, stylized waves, birds perch on vases, and what looks suspiciously like a very smug-looking ice cube wearing a crown. Might be bait, it's a lion. Might be it's marketing. Either way, it fits. You pause beside a broken fountain. They used to put cold pebbles in the water, someone says. Feel cooler. You squint at them. Wait, how does that work? They grin. It doesn't, but it made people think it did. So, an early version of placebo air conditioning. Got it. By late afternoon, a wind kicks up, rustling dry grass and carrying with it the distant scent of cumin and smoke. Time to head back. You climb into the cart again, bumping along as the ruins shrink behind you. You can't help but feel like you've touched something deeply human here. Not just trade routes or engineering feats, but the quiet persistence of comfort. Ice wasn't just a novelty. It was a promise that even in heat, there could be relief. That even in motion, there could be calm. That someone, somewhere, was thoughtful enough to wrap coal in straw and carry it across the desert for a stranger. The sun sinks, painting the hills in rose and rust. You close your eyes, lulled by the cart's rhythm and the dry rasp of wheels on stone. Tomorrow, you'll be back at the Yakhchal. But tonight you dream of long-lost eyes sleeping beneath stars and the strange generosity of coolness shared in a world that so often burns. Section 9. The day's warmth has yet to dissipate when you return to the village. A sense of peace has settled over the land, and the Yakhchal looms like an ancient sentinel, still holding secrets of forgotten seasons. You wander through the cool shadow it casts and pause, wondering how many stories have been sealed within those walls, how many hands have carried blocks of ice from here to every corner of Persia, the Silk Road, and beyond. How many stories were told over frosty cups of off Shabbat under the stars, or whispered in the cool comfort of an ice chamber after a day spent under the relentless sun. But today you've come to witness something more, something quieter, more intimate. As evening approaches, the village gathers again, this time not for celebration, but for something simpler, the evening ritual of the ice-making community. Tonight, you are invited to witness the preparation of the ice itself, the magic that turns the world of ice from a cold commodity into a source of community and tradition. Reza, the caretaker of the Yakhchal, has a certain gleam in his eye, like a man preparing for a slow, dignified performance. The air is cooler now, but the work still requires diligence. There's an understanding between him and the people here, an unspoken agreement about the importance of this tradition. The first step, as always, is the inspection of the structure. You follow Reza as he climbs the ladder to the top of the dome, adjusting the vent and surveying the surroundings. From this vantage point, you realize how large the Yakhchal truly is. Its proportions so perfectly suited to the desert that it's easy to forget its enormity when standing in its shade. The village is already a patchwork of red-tiled roofs and tiny pathways winding like rivers through the earth. Tonight, the goal is to harvest the ice and begin preparing for the upcoming summer months. Reza explains that as the air cools, the ice that has formed inside the dome will begin to melt, and the careful layering of ice, ash, and straw must be done just right to slow down the melting process. It's a delicate balance, one that requires the experience of the entire team. You're asked to help by adding fresh layers of insulation around the ice, straw bundled tightly, mats woven meticulously. As you work, you can't help but feel the history of the Yakhchal seep into your bones. Of such gatherings, each layer of insulation, each moment of adjustment, a quiet act of preservation, not just of ice, but of life itself. The ice inside the Yakhchal is a gift passed from generation to generation, a way to survive the heat, yes, but also a way to bring people together. Later, the villagers sit on the ground around a small fire, sipping tea from delicate cups. Village, when it's cold, was shared by everyone, from the young children to the elderly who needed relief from the heat. There are no grand ceremonies tonight, no grand feasts. Instead, there's a quiet sense of reverence in the air, a respect for the simple task of ensuring the Yakhchal is ready for the heat ahead. Ice, after all, is never guaranteed. It must be cultivated, protected, and shared. You find yourself drawn into the rhythm of the village, its slow, unhurried pace that seems so at odds with the frantic pace of the outside world. Here, in this peaceful corner of the desert, there's a reminder that the simplest things are often the most important. Yakhchal, between effort and reward, patience and generosity. As the fire dies down and the stars begin to twinkle overhead, you offered a cup of cold, sweet tea made with ice from the Yakhchal. The taste is sharp and refreshing, a momentary respite from the warmth of the evening. You take a deep breath, feeling the coolness spread through you. And for a moment, it's as if time itself slows. This is not the world of high-speed travel or modern conveniences. It is a world where the seasons matter, where the heat and cold are not just physical conditions, but intimate parts of the rhythm of life. Here, in this remote corner of Persia, ice is more than just a thing to be stored or sold. It is a thread that connects past to present, the earth to the sky, the village to the wider world. You close your eyes for a moment, listening to the soft murmurs of the villagers around the fire, the faint rustle of straw, the whisper of the wind across the desert. The Yakhchal, now securely wrapped in layers of insulation, stands as a silent guardian, its eyes still preserved, still waiting for the heat to return. In the distance, a lone owl calls, its voice a soft echo in the cool desert night. And in that moment, understand, this is not just a village, not just a Yakhchal, but a place where people have learned to live with the rhythms of nature, and perhaps, more importantly, a place where they have learned to make peace with time itself. Section 10. As you drift through the night, the air cooling with the fading embers, you realize that what started as a curious exploration into ancient ice storage has grown into something far more intimate, only to architectural ingenuity, but to the quiet bonds of community, to a people who have learned the art of patience, and more than that, they've learned the art of balance. The balance between the scorching desert sun and the comforting coolness of ice, between work and rest, between the past and the present. The morning comes slowly, the golden light spilling across the rooftops of the village in soft hues. There's a calm, almost sacred silence, untouched by time. The village seems to be holding its breath, waiting for the day to unfold. You wait to the sound of footsteps in the yard, the soft scuff of sandals on earth. You rise, stretch, and step outside to find the village already awake. The sounds of morning are familiar, the clink of metal pots, the quiet hum of voices, and in the background, the gentle rasp of a broom sweeping dust. But there's something different about today. Perhaps it's the air, fresh and crisp after the night cool respite, or perhaps it's simply the quiet knowledge that the Yakhchal is ready, its contents preserved, its work complete for the time being. Reza, the caretaker, smiles as he passes by. He's holding a wooden tray laden with bread, honey, and fresh yogurt. Simple, earthy fare that has always accompanied the early mornings of this place. Ready for another day? He asks, his voice warm and welcoming. You nod, accepting the offering, and sit in the cool shade of a nearby fig tree, watching the world come alive. The villagers are already busy preparing for their day's tasks. Some head to the market, others gather in small groups to prepare the noon meal, and some, like the elderly women, sit under the awning of the Yakhchal, chatting about the upcoming season, reminiscing about past summers, and making sure the ice is still preserved. Even in the mundane act of sitting and chatting, there's a deep sense of continuity here, a deep respect for the cycles of life, for the knowledge passed down through generations. You think back to the day before, to the work you did with Reza and Thea, other villagers, there was something meditative about it, something grounding in the simple act of layering straw around the ice, of knowing that these small actions would have a lasting impact, not just for the village, but for the people who rely on it. It's a rhythm of life that feels almost eternal, like the Yakhchal itself, silent, steadfast, waiting for the return of the sun and the heat, ready to offer relief once more. As you sip your tea, the village begins to hum with its daily routine. The Yakhchal, standing tall and proud at the center, seems to be a constant, a quiet symbol of the balance that holds this community together. It's a reminder that even in a world of constant change, there are things that remain steady, things that give life a rhythm, a cadence. The day passes lazily, the heat of the afternoon pushing everyone into the shade once more. You join the villagers in the cool embrace of the Yakhchal's shadow, feeling the heat of the day push against the cool refuge. And as you sit, the stillness of the moment washes over you, like the smooth, slow trickle of ice melting into water. The sun sets, and with it, the familiar rhythm of evening falls. Once more, you return to your small corner of the courtyard, settling down to watch the stars begin their slow climb into the night sky. There's a profound peace here, a quiet understanding that the cycle of life is ever-changing, but also ever-constant. The ice, the heat, the work, the rest, it all flows together like a river through time. As you lay back, the soft hum of the night around you, you realize that you've become a part of this place, part of its rhythm. And it's a rhythm that feels somehow just right. You close your eyes, letting the coolness of the night air wrap around you, knowing that the ice will hold through another season, that the Yakhchal will endure, and that tomorrow the village will rise to face another day, its rhythms continuing on as they always have. And with that thought, you drift off to sleep, wrapped in the quiet comfort of this ancient place, knowing that time here moves slowly, like the melt of ice into water, a gentle, unhurried flow